You're standing in a trench somewhere in northern France. It's November 1918. The mud beneath your boots has swallowed men whole. Every few minutes the ground trembles, not from artillery, but from the footsteps of thousands of men who, after 4 years of unimaginable horror, have just heard 3 words that seemed impossible. The war's over. What happens next is one of history's most extraordinary and least told stories. Not a story of generals or treaties, but of ordinary men at the absolute limit of human endurance, finding ways to celebrate with almost nothing in their hands and everything in their hearts. The silence before the storm of joy. At 11 o'clock in the morning on November 11th, 1918, the guns stopped. Soldiers who had lived inside a constant wall of sound, the crack of rifles, the thunder of howitzers, the shriek of shells, were suddenly confronted with something they had almost forgotten: silence. Veterans later described it as deeply unsettling at first, almost louder than the war itself. Men stood at their firing steps and stared across no man's land, struggling to comprehend that the scarred, wire-laced wasteland before them would not kill them today. Lighting up, fire flares, and the return of warmth. The first instinct was light. For years, open flame had meant death. A lit match at night could draw a sniper's bullet from 300 yards. But within minutes of the ceasefire, men began lighting fires openly. Great, roaring fires built from duckboards, ammunition crates, and broken rifle stocks. Soldiers who had mastered smokeless fire techniques to survive now built the most visible fires they could. Signal flares followed, fired not in warning but in pure jubilation, turning the sky above the Western Front into something resembling a firework display. The feast from almost nothing. Inside every soldier's kit was the residue of survival: hard-tack biscuits, tins of bully beef, dried vegetables. But on that November morning, men reached into their packs and found treasure-reserved tins, hidden chocolate, small bottles of rum. Tin cans became pots, bootlaces became pot hangers, and biscuits were fried in grease to make something approaching a hot meal. Men pooled their rations, immediately recognizable to any modern bushcraft group making a communal camp meal, and created feasts that were meagre by measure but extraordinary by emotion. Some soldiers traded food with former enemies across no man's land. German black bread exchanged for British jam. French wine passed to a Canadian rifleman. In these exchanges lived the oldest human understanding of food, that sharing a meal is the foundational act of peace. Music, movement, and the healing power of play. Mouth organs had travelled to war in breast pockets across every army. In dugouts carved meters below the surface, men had played quietly in the dark for years. Music was morale fieldcraft, regulating the nervous system when the mind was close to breaking. Now those harmonicas came into open air. Improvised drums appeared from empty ammunition tins. Men who had not danced in years danced in the mud of no man's land, reclaiming the same scarred earth that had defined their captivity and making it defiantly a dance floor. What these men teach us today: strip away the history, and what you have is a masterclass in human adaptability. These soldiers survived not because of superior equipment, but because they were relentlessly resourceful, seeing a cooking pot in a tin can, a football pitch in a muddy field, life in silence. Every principle they lived by is foundational to modern bushcraft. Manage your fire, know your terrain, pool your resources, and maintain morale as seriously as your kit. The men who danced on November 11th, 1918 understood that resilience without joy is just endurance, and that the will to celebrate, even with nothing, is itself a survival skill. Join the Chronicle, subscribe to Fieldcraft Chronicles, and join a community of history enthusiasts, survivalists, and bushcraft learners who believe the past has everything to teach us about facing the future. Share this video with someone who values self-reliance and human ingenuity, because stories like these deserve to be heard. The war ended, the lessons never did.